I shared my sandwich with a woman everyone else ignored. She looked at me with eyes too sharp to belong to a beggar, handed me a folded paper and whispered, "Call me when you need a way out." That was the day everything in my life began to shift toward revenge. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I promise, this one will leave you asking yourself, what would you do if a stranger offered you a lifeline? My name is Cassidy Hart. I'm 32, a single mom and a data analyst who fought my way out of the Bronx into the glass towers of Manhattan. I don't come from money. I come from leaking roofs, second-hand shoes, and nights where my mother stretched one loaf of bread into 3 meals. I worked until my fingers cramped, believing education would be my ladder out of poverty. And for a while I thought I had made it. A good job in a healthcare fintech firm, a small apartment for me and my baby girl, Noah, and the fragile hope that maybe I was building a life worth keeping. But then came the walls I couldn't climb, the nepotism, the glass ceilings, the whispers in boardrooms that I wasn't one of them. Promotions went to people with the right bloodlines, not the right skills. And when I dared to question it, the company made sure I paid. That day in the park, I was eating fast, one hand on my sandwich, the other rocking Noah's stroller. Then I noticed her, a frail woman, hair silver but her eyes unsettlingly alive, scanning me like she knew something. I tore the sandwich in half and held it out. She accepted without a word, but then she did something strange. From the folds of her coat she slid out a scrap of paper. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "Call this number," she said, her tone flat, unwavering. "When you truly need a way out." I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe it was nonsense. But her eyes, they were too sharp, too knowing. As if she already understood the battles I was fighting behind polite smiles. I shoved the paper into my pocket and told myself I'd forget it. But later that evening, as I opened the fridge and stared at the last bottle of milk, the apartment lights flickering from another unpaid bill, I unfolded the paper. Just a number written in steady, deliberate handwriting. And I couldn't stop wondering, who exactly was this woman? And why did her words feel less like a suggestion and more like a prophecy? The next morning I walked into the office only to be called into HR. "Performance issues," they said. I knew better. It was Dylan Locke's promotion they were clearing space for. When I left the building, broken and furious, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with an unknown number, the very digits scrawled on that crumpled piece of paper. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. 5th Street Cafe. Don't be late." I froze on the sidewalk, heart pounding. Whoever she was, she already knew my life was collapsing. And I had one decision to make: ignore her, or step into the shadows she was leading me toward. The woman I thought was homeless wasn't a stranger at all. She was the sister of the woman who ruined me, and the founder of the empire that destroyed my life. The moment I stepped into the cafe, I felt a strange weight pressing down on me. The place was old, tired, the walls stained, the smell of burnt coffee clinging to the air. But the woman sitting at the far corner table was nothing like the shivering stranger I'd met in the park. She sat upright, her eyes sharp and locked on mine as if she had been waiting for me for years. I walked toward her, my hands tightening on Noah's stroller handle. She nodded at the empty chair. I sat, my throat dry, my heart pounding. "You're Cassidy Hart," she said. It wasn't a question, it was a fact. I stiffened. I hadn't told her my name. "Who are you?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. "My name is Eleanor Locke," she said, her voice calm, almost too calm. The name made my stomach twist. Locke. The family that had taken everything from me. Genevieve Locke, the CEO who humiliated me and destroyed my career. Locke. I whispered. "Genevieve's family?" She nodded slowly, her gaze unflinching. "I'm her sister. And once, long ago, I co-founded the company you worked for." Her words spun around in my head like shards of glass. I had heard the rumors. Genevieve had a sister, but she'd been dismissed as unstable, forgotten by the family, erased from history. Yet here she was, sitting across from me, her eyes burning with a fire that hadn't gone out. Eleanor slid a leather folder across the table. Inside were copies of falsified clinic records, offshore accounts in Dylan Locke's name, and emails signed by executives that detailed bribes and cover-ups. "I lost everything because I trusted them," she said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. "They told me I was going through a difficult time. They sent lawyers with documents I didn't fully understand. By the time I realized what they had done, my shares, my name, my credibility, it was all gone. They called me unstable. And the world believed them. Her hands shook as she pushed the papers toward me. I stayed quiet for years because I was afraid. Journalists vanished. Accountants died in accidents. I knew I was next if I spoke. So I hid. And I watched. And I gathered proof. But proof means nothing without someone strong enough to act. Her eyes locked onto mine. That's why I came to you, Cassidy. I've read your reports. I've seen the way you fought, the way you refused to bow to them. You are everything they fear. Genevieve doesn't hate you because you're weak. She hates you because you remind her of everything she stole. I swallowed hard. But why now? Why me? Because you have nothing left to lose except your daughter. And that doesn't weaken you, it makes you unstoppable. I have the evidence. You have the courage. Together we can end them. That night I rocked Noah to sleep, the folder heavy in my lap. Her tiny hand wrapped around my finger and my heart ached with both love and fury. Eleanor's words wouldn't leave me. When you have nothing left to lose, no one can stop you. I whispered to my baby in the dark. They won't crush me. Not again. For you I'll fight. 2 days later, a small article appeared online. Healthcare giant under scrutiny for suspicious billing. The details matched the documents Eleanor had shown me. But I hadn't sent them. Which meant only one thing. Eleanor had already made her first move. And the Locke family was about to realize someone was coming for them. If you were me, would you trust Eleanor and step into her war? Or walk away before being dragged under? The first leak wasn't just a headline. It was the opening shot in a war I never asked for. If you knew dangerous people were behind your downfall, would you fight them in the open? Or strike from the shadows? Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments. The morning after that article appeared, the entire office was buzzing. I didn't work there anymore, but old colleagues texted me. Something's happening. The Lockes are furious. The headline was small, tucked away on the finance page of an online journal, but it was enough to stir unease. Billing fraud. Fake patients. Shell clinics. Exactly the documents Eleanor had shown me. I hadn't moved a finger. Which meant Eleanor had pulled the trigger. Later that day I met her again, this time in a library so empty it felt abandoned. She sat in the farthest corner, her coat pulled tight, her voice barely above a whisper. They're scrambling already, she said. But this is just the beginning. We bleed them slowly. One document at a time, one headline at a time, until even their allies start to doubt them. I stared at her. And what about me? If they find out I'm connected to this? Eleanor's eyes sharpened. They already ruined you. You've already lost your career. But now you have something they can't take. Momentum. Use it. Her confidence was unnerving, but when I thought of Noah, my baby girl who deserved a future beyond broken ceilings and stolen chances, I felt my resolve harden. That night I used the encrypted channel Eleanor had given me. I scanned and sent one document, a shell company's ledger showing millions funneled offshore. I didn't sign it. I didn't leave a trace. I just hit send. My heart hammered as though I had fired a gun. And in a way I had. 2 days later, another article appeared. Financial anomalies surface in Locke Corporation. It didn't mention Genevieve directly, but the numbers were there, the ones I had sent. The ripples spread. Shareholders demanded meetings. Employees whispered in corners. But then came the backlash. Genevieve Locke appeared on television, flanked by Dylan and Mara, her voice calm, her smile rehearsed. These are baseless accusations, she said, her tone dripping with practiced charm. Competitors will say anything to harm us. Our company has always operated with integrity. I watched from my parents' living room while Noah slept upstairs. My mother cradled the baby. My father sat stiff beside me. On the screen, Genevieve oozed authority. But I could see it, the flicker in her eyes, the tightness in Dylan's jaw. Fear. Eleanor called me that night, her voice low but steady. Good. The ripples are spreading. But listen to me carefully, Cassidy. Once they sense the threat is real, they will strike back. And when they do, you need to be ready. Her warning didn't take long to prove true. The very next evening, I was walking back from a late shift at a diner I'd picked up for extra cash. The streets were quiet, the stroller wheels rattling against uneven pavement. Suddenly I froze. My car, the one parked 2 blocks away, sat at a crooked angle, its hood slightly open. Something was wrong. When I got closer I saw it, the brake line neatly severed. A silent message. I clutched Noah tighter, my chest tightening until it hurt. Whoever had done this wanted me to know. They were watching. Back inside the safety of my parents' home, I pressed my forehead against the crib's edge as Noah slept peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering around us. My mind screamed, what if I had driven her today? Eleanor's words echoed, they will strike back. And I realized this wasn't just about articles or documents anymore. It was survival. The Locks weren't going to sit quietly while their empire cracked. And I wasn't going to run. If they wanted a war, they had just declared it. Would you keep leaking from the shadows, knowing your enemy is watching every move, or confront them head-on no matter the cost? Fear controls everyone, until one person decides they're done being afraid. The days after the severed brake line felt like walking on a tightrope. Every sound outside the window, every unfamiliar car on our street made my skin crawl. I kept Noah close, never leaving the house without checking over my shoulder. But Eleanor was right. The Locks were rattled, and that meant their grip wasn't as strong as it used to be. Then something happened that shifted everything. Anna, the journalist Eleanor trusted, managed to convince a former employee to speak anonymously. Her name was Priya, a data scientist who once worked in the analytics division. She had proof. Internal reports manipulated to hide the company's use of fraudulent clinics, reports that linked directly to campaign donations for politicians who buried investigations. For years she had stayed silent. Now, with the first leaks already public, she finally stepped forward. If I don't talk now, she said in her trembling voice during a late-night call, then when? Anna published the testimony under strict anonymity. It wasn't front-page news yet, but it was enough. The whispers inside the company grew louder. Shareholders sent urgent memos demanding explanations. Dylan Locke, in particular, was reportedly furious, storming into meetings accusing his own staff of betrayal. Meanwhile, Eleanor and I met in a small diner outside the city. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes blazed with something I hadn't seen before. Do you see what's happening? She said, her hands gripping the coffee cup so tightly it rattled against the saucer. One voice leads to another. They're scared, Cassidy. Scared of losing their jobs, their families, their safety. But once they realize there's more of us than of them, the dam will break. I nodded, though a knot twisted in my stomach. And when the dam breaks, what happens to us? They already tried to kill me. Eleanor leaned closer, her voice sharp as a blade. That's why we move fast. We gather witnesses, we gather originals, and then, one strike. Not two, not three. Because if we miss, Cassidy, they'll bury us forever. Her words haunted me. That night I came home to find my mother holding Noah against her chest. The baby had a fever, her tiny body flushed with heat. I rushed to the kitchen, but the fridge was nearly empty and we had no medicine left. My chest tightened with guilt. I had promised to protect her, yet here we were, sick, broke, hunted. But then, as I sat on the floor in despair, a knock rattled the front door. When I opened it, a small package sat on the step. Fever medicine, baby formula, even a carton of milk. No note, just Eleanor's doing. I broke down then, silently. She wasn't just dragging me into her war. She was reminding me why I had to keep fighting. In the days that followed, more witnesses crept out of the shadows. Jamal, a former financial controller, sent Anna scanned copies of secret ledgers. Another ex-employee revealed bribes disguised as patient safety initiatives. A betrayed business partner came forward on a late-night talk show, his face blurred but his words sharp. The Locks built their empire on lies. The dam was cracking. But cracks attract predators. One evening, as I wheeled Noah's stroller up the steps, a sleek black car slowed beside the curb. The window rolled down just enough for me to see Dylan's smug face. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten. He just mouthed two words, stop. Now. Then the car pulled away. My blood ran cold. They knew exactly where I lived. And if witnesses were finally daring to speak, the Locks would get more desperate than ever. Would you keep pushing, knowing every step forward made you and your family a bigger target? Or would you back down before the storm broke completely? When you're fighting giants, you don't get endless chances. You get one shot, and if you miss, you don't survive. If you had evidence that could topple an empire, would you risk everything to use it? By now the Locks were under siege. Headlines swirled, shareholders were restless, and whispers of federal investigations echoed in the corridors of power. But Eleanor was right. Leaks and testimonies weren't enough. If we wanted to finish this, we needed the originals. Documents that could stand in court. Evidence no one could spin or deny. That meant one thing: breaking into the archive. Jamal had told us about it weeks earlier. A locked room inside the old corporate wing, guarded but rarely visited. Inside were the ledgers, contracts, and audio memos Genevieve kept as insurance. If we could get even part of it, it would be a fatal strike. The plan was reckless, dangerous, borderline impossible. And yet Eleanor's eyes shone with a kind of desperate determination. "Cassidy," she said, her hand trembling as she traced the rim of her teacup, "I lost everything because I hesitated. You won't make that mistake. You'll take what's ours back." So we set the trap. Dylan and Mara had hired investigators to follow me, so I gave them something to follow. I drove Noah's empty stroller through downtown, ducked into stores, circled blocks, letting their men think they were tailing me. Meanwhile, Jamal slipped into the corporate building with a stolen ID badge. When I joined him, my heart pounded so loud it drowned out my own thoughts. We pried open the archive door with shaking hands. Inside were shelves stacked with files, binders, and, most damning of all, recordings. I picked up one, slid the tape into a dusty player, and Genevieve's voice crackled to life. "Double the patient numbers. I don't care if they exist or not. Make it happen. If the board asks questions, you know how to handle them." My knees nearly buckled. It was her. Cold, ruthless, undeniable. We stuffed as many files and recordings as we could into bags. When the alarm finally tripped, we barely escaped through the side exit, our lungs burning as we sprinted into the night. That was the moment I realized, we had it. The bullet. The one shot. But victory never comes without a cost. The next evening, a message arrived on my phone. No number, no name, just a photo. Eleanor, tied to a chair, her face bruised but her eyes blazing with defiance. And underneath, 3 words that made my blood run cold. "Bring it back." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. The locks had her. And now the choice was mine. Save Eleanor by surrendering the evidence, or use it to burn their empire down, knowing she might not live to see it. What would you do? Sometimes justice demands the one thing you can't bear to lose. The question is, do you pay the price or do you walk away? The message with Eleanor's photo burned in my hands. Bring it back. 3 words, simple and merciless. The locks had her. They thought I'd panic. They thought I'd fold. I didn't. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, Noah asleep in the next room, my parents whispering prayers upstairs. I spread the files across the table. The ledgers, the contracts, the recordings of Genevieve's own voice. It was more than enough to collapse her empire. But Eleanor's warning echoed in my head. One strike. Don't miss. So I chose to gamble everything. I contacted Anna, the journalist, and Jamal, the accountant. Together we crafted a plan. The next shareholders' meeting was set for the following morning. That would be the battlefield. I would release everything live in front of investors, reporters, regulators. And while the locks scrambled to save themselves, Eleanor's location would be exposed to the authorities. The morning came heavy with storm clouds. The shareholders' hall gleamed with glass and steel, but the air was electric, tense. For the first time in years, Genevieve Locke looked cornered. She stood at the podium, her smile brittle, her voice trembling as she tried to reassure the room. "These accusations are fabrications. We remain committed to our values." Then the screens behind her lit up. Emails. Bank transfers. Offshore accounts. And finally, the recording. Her voice, cold and undeniable. "Double the patient numbers. I don't care if they exist." Gasps filled the hall. Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. Shareholders erupted in shouts. Dylan and Mara went pale as ghosts. Genevieve froze, her mask shattering in real time. And then another voice joined the storm. Eleanor's. She appeared on the live feed, bruised but unbroken, standing beside federal agents who had raided the warehouse where she was held. "My name is Eleanor Locke," she declared, her voice steady. "I co-founded this company and I was betrayed by my own sister. Today I'm here to set the record straight." The room exploded. Reporters swarmed. Shareholders shouted for her resignation. And within hours, a vote of no confidence was passed. Genevieve, Dylan and Mara were stripped of their power, escorted out under flashing cameras. The empire had fallen. When I saw Eleanor later, she looked fragile but fierce. She clasped my hands, her voice breaking. "You did what I couldn't, Cassidy. You gave me back my voice. And you gave Noah a future." Weeks later, a new board was installed. Eleanor refused a seat, her time was done. But they offered me something I never expected. A place at the table. Not as a puppet but as a leader. I didn't take the title of CEO. I didn't need it. Instead, I used the settlement money and public support to found a patient safety foundation in Ava's. No, in Noah's name. Life didn't become perfect. The scars remained. But every morning when I held my daughter and saw her smile, I remembered why I had fought. Why I had risked everything. Because in the end, justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure the ones you love can finally live without fear. So when people ask me how it all began, I tell them the truth. It started with a sandwich. And a stranger's promise, "Call me when you need a way out." Would you have made that call?